Hello and welcome to the grand finals of the World Cup of Pokémon VGC, hosted by Victory Road, sponsored by Elgato, Gigisaur and Metafi. My name is Jamie Boyt and I am joined by Ben Kiriakou, and we are going to be bringing you these grand finals between Canada and Thailand.
We are indeed, and it's so exciting to be here in the grand finals, being able to watch it unfold as effectively it happened at all. All of these games are pre-recorded, so the teams will know the results so far and who will be crowned the World Cup champion, of course. But we will be seeing it live as far as we can in the order the matches were played. So we'll be with both teams along for the journey and seeing who will be crowned the Victory Road World Cup of Pokémon VGC champion.
Yeah, we are absolutely grateful that all 7 of these matches can be brought to you. Everyone does have at least one capture card, so we're going to be able to see every little bit of this grand finals, which is absolutely fantastic. And if you do want to catch up on the grand finals, then you can go and check out the YouTube channel of Victory Road. All of the matches will be posted on there. Please go and follow VGC Victory Road on Twitter for all updates as well. We've got the Victory Road VGC Twitch, which hopefully you're watching right now, so please give us a follow. And then you can join the Discord in Victory Road VGC as well. And if you want to check out everything that has gone from this World Cup, you can go to worldcupvgc.com.
Yeah, exactly. We featured a little bit of statistics from yesterday in the pre-show. There's so much more below the surface. So if you want to just lose yourself for a little bit of time in that website, it's a great place to go and explore. But for now, we're going to be starting to have a look at the matches that have been played so far in the run-up to both of these great teams tournaments. So they've got to the finals, but of course they've had to knock out some excellent teams along the way to get there. And you know, I couldn't really speak more highly of the quality of play within the top 16 bracket that these teams have played, and they've just done such a fantastic job along the way.
Yeah, that top 16 looks incredibly strong with all of those teams, and Canada and Thailand were able to come out on top. Canada defeating Taiwan in the top 16, then moving on to the top 8, they were able to take out India, and then moving on to the finals there. So that is against when they beat Australia in the semi-finals as well. Thailand did manage to defeat Japan in the top 16, which was always going to be an impressive feat whenever you managed to defeat Japan. Then moving on, they managed to take out Poland in the quarterfinals, and then finally France in the semi-finals, and now here we are with Canada versus Thailand in the finals.
Exactly. And you know, if you haven't been following at all along the way, both of the semi-final matches, Canada versus Australia, Thailand versus
France.
Versus France, apologies. Thailand versus France, they were both 4-0 victories. The last 3 games, of course, we played out because of, just keeping the 7 matches going. And we got to watch what both of these teams did after they actually got over the finish line. But 4-0 victories effectively in both teams' top 4 matches. We were talking a little bit about this yesterday in the pre-show. It's like, what happens when you put 2 teams that are of this quality playing in the form that they are, clearly at the top of their game? What happens when you push these 2 teams against each other? And that's exactly what we're going to be seeing today.
Yeah, it's going to be absolutely brilliant to see what is going to be happening in these grand finals. So that is how these 2 teams got here. We can now have a look more in depth at Canada and Thailand themselves. Thailand, of course, made it to the top 8 in the previous season, so jumped straight into the next stage without having to play that initial qualifier and managed to get that 4-2 records going into these finals here. Whereas Canada did have to play out those qualifiers and ended up with a 7-1-1 record, which is a very, very impressive record.
Yeah, kind of really dominant all the way through the event. And, they've both done this in different styles, right? We've got Canada that's been playing really consistently and really just taking teams that they're familiar with, playing them better than their opponents, clearly across the board, being able to take those wins. There's a few close margins there, but actually really when you look down the list of games there's a good set of achievements that are just a little bit better than 4-3s in the top 16s, and a little bit better than the 5-3 that you need in the group and qualifier stage to make it through. So a really dominant performance all the way through. Of course, Thailand technically undefeated so far within this, having a couple of draws to their names through the way in the group stages, did manage to make it out of the group stages, of course, into the top 16. But technically still undefeated, where Canada has taken one loss along the way. So, it's really hard to separate these teams out based on, the matches that they've been playing so far.
Yeah, they are both fantastic records coming out, and we're going to see if that is going to end up being an 8-1-1 or a 5-2-0 coming out in this finals. So really, really impressive run from both of these teams. And now we can move on to have a look at what we are going to be featuring today. These are the players that are going to be representing their countries in the grand finals. We'll start off with Kylan versus DJ. That is going to be the first match that we're going to bring to you. Then we'll be moving on to Ryan versus Narowich, William versus Papon, Matt versus Chayawat, Jean-Marc versus Akarapon, NJ versus Gun, and Neil versus Panyawat.
Yeah, all fantastic matches that we're going to be seeing. I'm looking forward to seeing really what both teams are going to be bringing, and whether the styles that they've taken through the entirety of this format are consistent throughout. We've seen, as I said before, Canada using those more consistent, solid teams, archetypes that they're really used to. And of course, Thailand, they've used more teams, or just as many teams as Canada and several other teams, without playing as many matches. In fact, 24 matches down, and they're still using the same number of unique teams, more unique Pokemon, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm really excited to see if they carry on that trend, if they're really pushing to be, making those edges in their team choices based on what the Canadian team are going to be using. And if Canada's going to be mixing it up as well, if they're going to be, trying to scout out what the Thailand players have been using. There's so much information that goes into, your preparation at this stage. All of the teams have played at least 6 matches, and that means there's a lot of information on the players. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing how these two teams really show off their preparation just as much as their play in this finals.
Absolutely. In these kind of formats, you do have the option of going with a comfort pick and to going with something you're comfortable with, but that leaves you slightly more open to being counter teamed, which is absolutely a thing in these kind of tournaments. So do you go for the comfort pick and open yourself to being a little bit more counter teamable because there's been so much information, or do you try and mix it up just a little bit, go with something a little bit riskier, but may not be as counter teamable as something more comfortable would have been? So it will be absolutely interesting here to see what is going to come out from all of these players.
It is, and the first match we've got Kylan versus DJ. And I'm excited to see DJ again. They played a really good set in their semi-final match against France, and was really impressed to see what they were bringing out. We've got a few achievements for DJ in the 2021 and 2022 season. A couple of the online ladders or online tournaments here, fairly big ones as well. Rose Tower Open had quite a few players making it to the top 8 of that, and as the June Challenge making it to the top 4. Kylan on the other side has a few more real life, so to speak, or tournament achievements here in the 2022 season. So really relevant to what's going on, and all in the senior division. But I think these days the senior division can be just as challenging as the Masters division in some areas, certainly. We've got a regional championship win. We've got Secaucus Regional Championship top 4, North American International Championships top 16, and top 4 in the current World Championship. So really showing their pedigree, making it to the top level of live competition.
Yeah, absolutely. And very commendable as well from the senior division to be representing their country in the finals. Like you said, the seniors are very much catching up to the Masters. So very, very strong performances coming out. And we can now see the teams coming out here. It's going to be a Swordfish team from both of these players. Slightly different compositions. So we can see we have that dual weather mode coming out from Kylan that's got the Kyogre, Venusaur and Torkoal mode. And then coming out from DJ's side, it's going to be that Swordfish team that likes to go fast with the max airstreams, as well as the Tailwind options as well.
Yeah, quite interesting to see like how the grass type Pokemon match up. You've got like this Venusaur versus Kartana as the supportive, or the offensive, should I say, grass type. DJ has the opportunity to Spore, whereas Kylan has the opportunity to go for Sleep Powder, and of course Kylan has the opportunity to change that weather to Sun to take better advantage of, or to slow down, should I say, the Kyogre on DJ's side of the field. And probably do a fair amount to that Zacian as well and put that under pressure. So it'll be really interesting to see how these things match up, especially with, 4 Pokemon in common, how these players have, trained their Pokemon, chosen their moves, and decided what items were going to be going onto each of their Pokemon will really make a difference in how this match plays out.
Yeah, in these kind of matchups, it tends to be very explosive. It tends to be who can position themselves slightly better. With the speed control, they both got the Tornadus, so they can both go for the Tailwinds. And then do you go for some max Airstreams as well to try and boost yourself even further? Do you try and go with the Venusaur to just be naturally faster if you can get yourself into the sun as well? It is definitely going to be a positioning game coming out for both of these players, which both teams do absolutely have the potential to be able to do.
They certainly do. And I think you're absolutely right there on positioning. It's going to be so important. Of course, the other thing that will be quite interesting to see is, I think, how these Landrases are trained and positioned, because one of the common ways that Landorus can be used with, at least with DJ's team, is the combination of Rage Powder and a little bit of setup with Swords Dance and playing it a little bit more aggressively, whereas I think the composition, like what Kylan is using, tends to be a little bit more, a little bit less aggressive in that way, a little bit less set up here. But here we are going into game 1. We've got a Zacian and a Tornadus. And a Tornadus and Kyogre hitting the field turn 1.
Pretty classic leads coming out from both of these players, but the Zacian is going to be slightly faster than that Kyogre initially, so it's going to be able to attack. If both of the Tornaduses match Tailwinds, it will be able to attack before that Kyogre moves, so you do need to be careful of the speed controls here. Do you go for the initial Tailwind straight away just to match it, or do you try and delay it? That's one of the key factors of this Tornadus versus Tornado mirror match. Do you go for the Tailwinds immediately, or do you try and stall it out so you can match the Tailwinds later, and then a few turns later you can have the speed control in your advantage? Because most Tornadus do carry Icy Wind as well, so you can start to go for an Icy Wind. If you're carrying the Focus Sash, you can do that pretty freely without the fear of being knocked out, as you get doubled up into, and then that frees up the restricted that you have on the field as well. You could also try and go for the Tailwind immediately in case the opponent is going for the Icy Wind and you get speed control immediately.
Well, no speed control going against this Zacian as it protects itself from the Icy Wind on the Tornadus. Tornadus on Kylan's side of the field does manage to move first. Whether that's a speed tie or not, yet it is fairly likely, but we are yet to see. Speed drop coming into that Tornadus on DJ's side of the field, and unfortunately going to take an Origin Pulse straight away. So looking like DJ was trying to go for maybe a similar play, getting that speed control up, but unfortunately for DJ, Kylan's Tornadus was able to go first, remove that Tornadus effectively for free, and now Kylan has the speed control.
Yeah, and that was the opportunity to go for a Tailwind on that turn 1, so that the Tornadus could at least do something before it got KO'd. Almost certainly going to be a speed tie. It does tend to be that way when you are running Tornadus on this kind of the team. And if they were both going for that initial Icy Winds to try and stall out going for the Tailwinds instead a few turns later, unfortunately for DJ, the Tornadus on Kylan's end was able to move first, and that allowed the Kyogre to outspeed as well. So now the Tornadus is still around on Kylan's side of the field. They just get to click Tailwinds, and you can go for Water Spout as well at this point. You don't need to rely on Origin Pulse in case you were attacked by the Zacian last turn. You can just go for a full HP Water Spout, and that's going to do some massive damage, even to the Kyogre that switched in as well.
Yeah, it's going to do so much work this turn, and Zacian protecting last turn really is a problem for DJ's positioning here as Tailwind goes off from the Tornadus. Water Spout hits into the Zacian and does manage to pick up a KO in 1. Maybe speaking to some of the item choices on Kylan's side of the field. DJ replying with an Origin Pulse, clever given the pretty much certainty that it's going to be taking a little bit of damage. Just wants to make sure that the damage that DJ gets off is consistent. Bringing the Tornadus down to its sash, doing a little bit of damage to that Kyogre, but Landorus switching in here I don't think is what you really want to be seeing when you're facing down a Tornadus and a Kyogre.
Not when it's in Tailwind either. If you had maybe matched the Tailwinds, Landorus would have been somewhat okay, because it would have naturally outsped that Kyogre, but then you just still contend with the Icy Wind that could come out from the Tornadus as well. So really you just get to click, even Water Spout at this point is probably as strong very close to as strong as Origin Pulse would be at this HP, so you can go for that pretty freely. You can just go for a Dynamax as well if you want to very much take care of the Landorus, if you're not confident that the Water Spout would KO a Dynamax Landorus. That probably needs to happen for DJ to come back into this game. They Dynamax the Kyogre, that's already sacrificed a lot of its HP, so it wouldn't be them making the most of the doubling of the HP that you can get here. But there is going to be at least a Dynamax coming out from Kylan's side of the field. You can be going for a Max Airstream as well if you wanted with the Tornadus at 1 HP, but the Kyogre is still looking pretty comfortable, so if it wants to double its HP here, it's going to be able to do some massive damage, and it will be able to do a lot of damage to this Landorus, and almost certainly take it out even if it chooses to Dynamax.
Yeah, there's times for styling and there's times for not styling, and I think in the grand finals of the World Cup, probably not the time for styling, just getting some damage on the field and getting the correct damage. And of course, you've got to look at this position as like, how does DJ get back into the game, and really like, I'd almost forgotten that there was no Dynamax yet in the game, because we've had 2 knockouts already so far without a Dynamax even shown. So a really explosive game, as we were saying earlier. Hurricane going off into the Kyogre, not quite picking up the KO, but doing really quite significant damage, leaving it in another Hurricane range really crucially. Critical hit there on the Max Geyser on the Water Spout, so unlikely that was really impactful at all, unless that Landorus was maybe carrying something like an Assault Vest. That's really the only way the Landorus would have been ever able to survive that. Origin Pulse coming out from the Kyogre on DJ's side of the field, just finishing off the Tornadus, but of course that Max Kyogre shrugging it off like an absolute champ, and Venusaur joining the field as Kylan's third option here.
Yeah, there's not really too much to be done at this point from DJ's side of the field. The Venusaur and the Kyogre are still very healthy, still very much going to be faster than this Kyogre. Any attack will take care of it at this point. Even the Torkoal switching in would have probably been able to take care of the game at that point, and that just really shows the momentum swing that can happen in these kind of games. Icy Winds was almost certainly the move of choice coming out from DJ's side of the field, and then it comes down to the speed tie in that case, because you're not going for the Prankster. Whoever wins the speed tie puts their restricted faster for sure than the other one, and in this case the Kyogre then gets to outspeed the Tornadus and put a stop to any of the Icy Winds going forward, and then effectively the momentum was always on Kylan's side, and it was almost over from that turn 1.
Yeah, and I think there's something quite interesting about turn 1 as well, in that the Zacian went for Protect, I believe, in that turn 1, and so wasn't going to be doing any damage anyway. That meant that Kylan's Icy Wind was always going off, so even if Icy Wind came off from DJ's side of the field first and was able to maybe break that Focus Sash on the Tornadus, you weren't ever going to knock it out in that turn. And so in contrast to what Kylan decided to do, which was get some speed control and knock out the Tornadus, and make some progress that way, Kylan was always going to be having the option to click that Tailwind button in turn 2 and at least keep the odds in their favour. Would have definitely been a much more uphill battle for Kylan in that game. Turn 1 really did allow the steamroll to take place, but I think it was a less clear that DJ was ever going to get a particularly strong position from that turn 1.
Yeah, absolutely. It really did need to be Tailwind on that first turn, at least so you can get your Zacian faster, so that the Tornadus then has to match the Tailwinds. But yeah, like you said, if the Icy Wind's always guaranteed from Kylan's side of the field, then you're going to guarantee that you have the Tailwind on the next turn as well. So probably does need to be going on the offensive a bit more if DJ does decide to lead with the same thing, because you need to be able to at least match what your opponent is going for, especially with these kind of Swordfish Tornadus teams. It is going to be a little bit of a switch up here. That's a Kartana being led next to the Tornadus coming out from DJ's side of the field, but Kylan's sticking to what looked last time. It's still going to be that Tornogre.
It is, and now we've got a little bit of a triangle going on here, because the Kartana is really going to like facing off against the Kyogre, but I think Kartana doesn't love being in front of the Tornadus, especially with the threat of that Hurricane. Icy Wind is still going to do a fair amount of damage to the Kartana. Even if it does go for max, it's still going to be fairly significant. And so, we've got the same sort of speed control options on the field available, but especially if that Kartana does go for the max, it's very much more free for DJ to go on the offensive and put a lot of pressure on Kylan's side of the field. In retrospect to turn 1 of game 1, where it where the Zacian wanted to go on the defensive, Kartana very much wants to be getting that damage off and go really hard and carve out some position for DJ to be able to have a little bit more room, have a little bit more board state so that he can get this game to back in his favour.
Yeah, and the Kartana being led like this definitely indicates that it wants to Dynamax like it has done. And that means it can do some massive damage to the Kyogre if it goes for max overgrowth, or it can start to match some more speed control by going for its own max airstreams. And this time the Tornadus on DJ's side is the one moving first. There's still no Tailwinds coming out from either of the Tornadus. It is most likely going to be Icy Winds once again, but DJ's getting the better end of it on this turn. Going to be doing some good damage to the Tornadus and dropping that speed. That means Kartana should outspeed this Tornadus as well. It's not going for any Prankster, but it's max overgrowth coming out from the Kartana, targeting down into the Kyogre. It did protect, so it's still going to take a nice chunk of damage, almost half, even through the protect, just showing how strong that Kartana is going to be. But that is not attacking the Tornadus on Kylan's side of the field. It is going to be able to move this turn and presumably match the Icy Wind that is going to be able to connect with the Tornadus and the Kartana and put them both slower. So now the Kyogre is actually the one with the speed advantage.
Yeah, and I think this is kind of what DJ was going for in the previous game, but there it is, the White Herb coming out from the Kartana, so no speed reduction here. I was about to say that the Kyogre was going to be faster than the Kartana once the Tailwinds get played on both sides, and effectively, Kartana's taken an Icy Wind and Kyogre hasn't in turn one, but with that White Herb, that changes the game so much in DJ's favour, because that Icy Wind failed. Now, when the Tornadus both click Tailwind, the Kartana is going to be faster than the Kyogre. The Kyogre now has to make a decision whether it switches out or not, because it's very easy for the Kartana, now that it's already protected, to be targeting into it. It doesn't matter if it maxes or not, especially in grassy terrain, it will be going down. So decision for Kylan to make here.
Did go for that Tailwinds, and it is going to be matched from DJ's side of the field. So thanks to that White Herb, the Kartana does have the speed advantage over this Kyogre. It can go for a max airstream to be able to make itself even faster, but not strong enough to take the knockout on that Kyogre. It needs to be max overgrowth to pick up the KO, but Kyogre is able to survive that attack. Even though you get the speed boost on the Kartana and the Tornadus, Kyogre is going to try and connect with this Origin Pulse. It does unfortunately miss that Kartana, but that will be enough to take the KO on that Tornadus. But this is one of the potential momentum swings that can happen. You've lost your Tornadus, but that might be a good thing, because now you get a paid switch into something in the back.
You do, and yeah, the Tornadus at this point in the game, not really doing either player that many favours. I mean, there's a little bit of Icy Wind that can be done, and just to keep yourself on the front end, so to speak, or just ahead of your opposing players' Icy Winds and Tailwinds and other things that they want to do. But with that max airstream coming out from the Katana, I think that was a really clever play. Even if it doesn't knock out the Kyogre, you kind of expect that slot, if you're DJ, to be passive. And so using it to make sure that the Tornadus on your opposing side of the field can't go for another Icy Wind effectively and get away with it, so to speak, means that you're just not going to be losing any position. And when your Zacian comes in now, it's looking really nice for DJ.
Yeah, absolutely is. And Kylan needs to protect his Tornadus to keep it alive this turn. And it does mean the Kartana is going to outspeed the Zacian as well, so it's going to move first with the max airstream. Does pick up the KO on that Kyogre, so that is going to be a beast boost for that Kartana. And another speed boost as well, this time for the Zacian as well as the Kartana. The speed control is absolutely going to be on DJ's side of the field pretty much for the rest of this game at this point. The Tailwinds have been matched. You've got two airstreams on your Kartana as well at this point. So it is looking very, very strong for DJ at the moment, because the Kartana did dodge that Origin Pulse. It's almost back to full HP from the grassy terrain it did set, and now the Zacian's got a speed boost. It might even outspeed a Venusaur that would be in the sun as well.
Yeah, potentially. It depends on how this Venusaur is going to be trained as well. Now that the max is over, we've got as you said, a couple of speed boosts, and I think that's quite interesting because one of the ways that I think Kylan gets back into this game is switching out the Tornadus, getting that sun on the field, and leveraging this Venusaur. If it does have the ability to protect itself, then maybe you can play a game where you get Tailwind a little bit later on, once your opposing DJ's Tailwind has run out, because DJ lost the Tornadus in the early turns where Kylan hasn't, and maybe that's a little bit of a route into the game. As it stands at the moment, this Venusaur's got to stand in front of the Zacian and be able to do something which, it really can be quite difficult for Venusaur to do, especially when it doesn't have the speed advantage.
Yeah, almost certainly won't have the speed advantage, at least on the Kartana. The Kartana's got 2 speed boost. It will come down to the training between the Venusaur and the Zacian here, between who is going to be moving first, because that Torkoal did switch in for the Tornadus. The Sun is now on the field, and that Venusaur is going for its Gigantamax. So if it does have access to Weather Ball, like a lot of these Venusaurs tend to carry on this team to make both use of the Rain and the Sun, then it could be able to knock out either of these Pokemon, and it is going to be pretty crucial to outspeed that Zacian, else it could be taking a Behemoth Blade on this Gigantamax turn. Smart Strike was the move of choice coming out from Kartana, not doing too much damage to the opposing Torkoal, but would probably pick up the KO on the Tornadus. And Zacian, even with just +1 speed, is able to outspeed this Venusaur, even though the Sun is active, and that is going to be doing so much damage to that Venusaur. It is just a 1-hit KO on that Gigantamax Venusaur, and that is pretty much curtains for Kylan in this game.
Yeah, I mean, the Torkoal, unfortunately, it's going to try its best, but probably really would like to get a Fire-type move off onto both of the Pokemon on DJ's side of the field here. I'd probably assume that there's a Kyogre at the back as well for DJ, which would make life even more difficult for Kylan to come back into this game. I think this is where at this point in the game, you've just got to attack into something for Kylan just to get a little bit of information. Probably not very many ways that you win the game from this position being Kylan, because you just get attacked before you're able to attack DJ, and DJ's got quite a lot of damage on their side of the field, so unlikely that you're going to be able to get through that. But if you can just find out what the last Pokemon is for sure, that gives you a lot of information going into Game 3.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to confirm whether it's the Landorus or the Kyogre, because one of them was left on the bench this game. But Smart Strike is coming out from the Tornadus. It was enough to pick up the KO on the Tornadus, so it was smart of the Torkoal to switch in to take that attack. But now the Kartana finally does land its mark on that Tornadus, gets another Beast Boost. Here comes a Burning Jealousy from the Torkoal, so that's almost certainly going to be able to KO this Kartana, especially because it's not the Assault Vest variant. But the Zacian did end up going for the Protect there, and one can assume that there is going to be a Kyogre in the back. If it's Landorus, we've still got the Grassy Terrain, so Earthquake won't be doing as much damage, and the Zacian did just protect itself. So maybe that would be a way back into the game. And I was speaking way too soon there, because of course the Grassy Terrain was set up on the very first turn, and now it's gone. So it probably doesn't even matter if Landorus is in the back.
No, probably not. And good play there from both players. DJ making the right adjustments to have yet another explosive game to take the second game of the set. Unfortunately, this Torkoal is going to be rather damp at the end of this turn, unless Kylan forfeits the game. But really good play there from Kylan to not just forfeit the game when they know that they'd lost. They really are going for getting as much out of the game as possible, and that's really something that you have to consider. Staying composed in these matches, especially at this top level where the matches matter as much as they do. So props to both players on getting through game 2 like this, and I think both of them are taking a little bit of extra time here to think about what they're going to be doing in game 3.
Absolutely. It was a really smart adjustment coming out from DJ. That Kartana put in a lot of work in that first game. And the item choice was really crucial as well. If it would have been the Life Orb or the Assault Vest that we've seen on Kartanas as well, it's usually one of the 3 items. The White Herb, very crucial there in negating that speed drop, because if it took that speed drop, Kyogre now outspeeds and it can do some massive damage before it would be KO'd. But that White Herb meant that the Kartana was always going to be in the driving seat when it comes to speed.
Exactly. And it just gives it a lot of freedom in turn 1. I think the big question now is, if you're Kylan, how do you adjust for the pressure that Kartana puts on the field? Because you kind of want to then start leading your own Zacian rather than the Kyogre to put pressure onto DJ's Kartana. But then if you start leading that and DJ adjusts to bringing the Kyogre instead, then you end up with the reverse of what happened in game 1. That's probably bad for you. So this is real mind games here coming into game 3 about how do you position, how do you adjust? Do both players go back to or stick with tried and true, or do they try to adjust in game 3? Because there's no more matches, no more games going on. You have to do what you need to do to win this game, to take the point for your team, and so lots of mind games to go into this game 3.
Yeah, and it's something to note as well that Kylan hasn't been bringing their Zacian at all. They've ended up bringing the Tornoga with Venusaur Torkoal in the back, so maybe that could be an adjustment going forward, because it would outspeed the Kartana naturally and get some good damage with the Sacred Sword, or close combat, whichever one it has, presumably. So potentially an option to bring maybe over the Venusaur or the Torkoal. The Torkoal didn't do too much. It looked like it could be in a good position against Kartana and Zacian, but when it got onto the field, it was pretty much in a position where the game was over at that point. So that could be a potential adjustment that could be made. But going back to the original plan for DJ, even though they lost that first game, Zacian is going to be led with the Tornadus, and here we are once again, game 1 lead, Zacian Tornadus versus Tornadus Kyogre.
Yeah, and this is going to showcase, I think, like exactly how these games can go completely differently from one another. If the Zacian attacks this turn and there's Icy Winds, then versus Tailwind on either of the Tornaduses, the speed order is going to massively change. The amount of damage that gets output from either player is going to massively change. So I think both players have really just got to dig deep here and find out which way they want to go in this game, because it's just going to be so difficult to navigate effectively.
And it's just going to be a double protect coming out from DJ's side of the field, so not going to be taking any Icy Winds or any damage this turn. And interestingly, the Tailwind was the move of choice coming out from Kylan's side of the field. And Water Spout, not even fearing any damage that could come out into the Kyogre this turn, in case the opposing Tornadus went for Tailwind and Zacian attacked it. So just very much going all guns blazing there with the Water Spouts to try and do as much damage as possible.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like now DJ gets deferred Tailwind and will have Tailwind for a turn longer than Kylan, but how to click the Tailwind button while Kylan's okay to now start clicking the Icy Wind button. The Kyogre's possibly going to take some damage, as potentially is the Tornadus, but I think overall the speed control on the next turn will be in Kylan's favour. I think in the longer term, it might be DJ that manages to edge it out here. Tailwind coming out from the Tornadus on DJ's side of the field, and a play rough going into the Kyogre does land and take it down to 7 hit points. And not quite enough for a KO here, but definitely going to be reducing the power of any Water Spout coming out. Kylan not falling for that whatsoever, getting that Origin Pulse onto the field. Combination of Icy Wind and Origin Pulse is enough to pick up the Tornadus quite comfortably here and leave the Zacian with very little health left.
And now Kylan's in the slight speed advantage because they got the Icy Wind on that opposing Zacian. And the Kyogre is the Pokemon of choice coming in for DJ's side of the field, so not a Pokemon with access to max Airstream either. That means that Kylan is going to have the speed advantage here for the next couple of turns, but then DJ will have the speed advantage for one turn after that because the Tailwind was set just slightly later. So if DJ can weather the storm coming out in these couple of turns, they may be able to swing it back around if they manage to sort it out with their own speed advantage when the Tailwind runs out on Kylan's side of the field. But at this point, the Zacian's been taken so low that it's going to be in range of even a Hurricane if the Tornadus wants to go for that as well. But you could go for an Icy Wind to just ensure that your Kyogre is going to be the faster one as well, because that hasn't taken an Icy Wind yet. DJs could still be outspeeding Kylan's Kyogre, and the Tailwinds have been matched, so that could be the case coming out here. If you do go for the Icy Wind, though, that's not going to KO the Zacian. You would have to rely on the Origin Pulse to be able to pick up that KO. And especially the fact that DJ is looking to be going for the Dynamax there with their own Kyogre, so that they can take as little damage as possible coming out from the Tornadus and the opposing Kyogre as well. Then you're going to have to be able to maybe go for the Icy Wind so you ensure that you outspeed so that you can get as much damage as possible. But at the same time, you won't KO the Zacian otherwise.
No, you won't. And maybe the Zacian is actually the target that you should be going for here. If it is that Torkoal Venusaur in the back, the Kyogre is effectively the least of Kylan's worries. But Protect on the Zacian coming out here, weathering that storm as an Icy Wind goes into the Kyogre, does land its mark, does drop the speed of Kyogre on DJ's side of the field, and a follow-up Origin Pulse hitting into Zacian's Protect, of course, and the Kyogre doing a little bit of damage here. But not very effective, of course. Hailstorm coming out from DJ's side of the field, going into that Tornadus. A clever use of move here. Max Hailstorm setting up the hail instead of the rain. That does knock out the Tornadus with only one hit landed into it, which is very good if you're playing into a focus Sash Pokemon, and is going to weaken damage on Kylan's side of the field and force Kylan to decide on whether or not to switch that Venusaur in now, or not, as the case may be, did forget that the Kyogre on Kylan's side of the field was on 7 hit points, so a really effective Max Hailstorm coming out from DJ there.
Yeah, the fact that both Pokemon were in range of Hail means that Max Hailstorm was definitely the smart move of choice there coming out for DJ's side of the field. And now Kylan is forced into their last 2 Pokemon. Torkoal is one of them, so the Hail is going to be overwritten immediately, and Venusaur is once again the Pokemon of choice. No Zacian coming out for Kylan's side of the field in all 3 of these games. It is just going to be that Venusaur that is going to try and take the game. We still have 1 more turn of Tailwinds for both of these players before it runs out on Kylan's side of the field, I believe, so the Venusaur should be able to outspeed both of these Pokemon, and if it wants to go for some massive damage into the Kyogre, it would be able to, but then the Zacian would be able to make it through the turn as well to be able to get the Behemoth Blade. So if you do target down the Zacian, that frees up the Kyogre to take care of the Torkoal, but if you take care of the Kyogre, that frees up the Zacian to take care of the Venusaur, so it's a very awkward position for both of these players. DJ's really close to being able to outstall the Tailwinds. 1 more turn, they'll be able to outspeed both of these Pokemon. Maybe the Venusaur would still outspeed the opposing Kyogre, depending on how it's trained, but it's taking the early Icy Wind as well, so the Venusaur would still be having the advantage in that case, and it is going to be going on the offensive. It is going to be Gigantamaxing, so where it's targeting here is going to be very crucial as to which Pokemon on Kylan's side of the field is going to take a lot of damage. Indeed,
so Kylan is going to be targeting that Max Quake into the Zacian slot, I believe. Going to be finishing off the Zacian. I would have done it for a Protect as well. It'd be interesting if the Landorus was a switch-in potential there for DJ. We'll have to see when DJ's last Pokemon comes onto the field. That special defense boost is going to be quite impactful, though. In combination with the Sun, will be able to mean this Max Geyser is doing as little damage as possible to this Torkoal, and Torkoal's hanging on. That special defense boost coming in so clutch there, setting up the rain, of course, again, so no more Sun for the Venusaur to be the fastest Pokemon on the field, and definitely will need or will be struggling without the Tailwind that Kylan's going to be losing at the end of this turn, as you've just seen it peter out there. But Jong is a fantastic move for Kylan to be using here in this position, because you kind of want to be protecting in this last turn of Tailwind, and it's really, there's no loss to be double protecting here. You maintain a little bit more speed advantage, you make sure that Kyogre goes to sleep, you waste out another turn of Max going in here, and when you've just taken a knockout as well to mean that Kyogre can't switch out at all, you know that Kyogre's going to sleep.
Yeah, and I'm not even sure if the Torkoal can take this Max Geyser, though. It isn't now in the rain. We saw how much it did in the sun, and now that's going to be a rain boost as well. It's going to be really close if it can survive that attack. Maybe the Max Hailstorm goes into the Venusaur, expecting the Torkoal to be going for the Protect, and if DJ's not comfortable enough with the Max Geyser being able to pick up the KO on that Torkoal. But Landorus being the Pokemon of choice over Kartana against the Venusaur is going to be very nice here. It does have the speed advantage for sure, the Tailwind's up, so DJ is going to be moving first with both of their Pokemon, because the Sun's disappeared as well. Venusaur won't have the Chlorophyll, and it won't have it for the rest of this game either, so the Torkoal is going to be going for the Protect here, and if the Max Geyser goes into it, it'll be really close if it's able to KO, but that's a fly, so the Landorus can't even take a Vine Lash here.
No, not at all. So Landorus leaving the field. And it is going to be, as you said, Jamie, the Max Hailstorm coming out onto the Venusaur. That's going to be doing a nice bit of damage there, actually. Setting up the Hail as well. A little bit of residual damage coming out from for all Pokemon on the field. Speaking of residual damage, though, we're going to be getting quite a bit of residual damage from that G-Max Vine Lash, doing a lot of damage to that Kyogre on this turn. So looking like it's going to be a little bit of a war of attrition here, where both teams are taking a little bit of damage here. But that Landorus, I think, is the thing we're looking at now. Between the Hail, which is going to be the last weather to be on the field, as well as the G-Max Vine Lash effect, that damage coming out at the end of every turn. This Landorus has got a lot of work to do, and it's taking a lot of damage every turn.
Yeah, I think when the Dynamax ends, probably the Venusaur and the Torkoal will both be in range of Earthquake, because it would have lost the doubling of the HP from the Venusaur, and you've yet to see the item on the Landorus as well. Given the fact that there's no Life Orb on the Kartana, that usually indicates the Life Orb's in the Landorus instead, so that'll be extra damage as well. But the fact it went for Fly, that means it's almost certainly targeting the Venusaur this turn.
Yeah.
Should be able to pick up the KO, but if it goes for a max guard, you get to go for a Yawn into the Landorus as well, and then it's going to be a little bit awkward to be able to KO both Pokemon because you can always just protect the Torkoal. So, especially because the Kyogre is going to be in range at the Vine Lash at the end of this turn, so it's not going to be able to do anything for the rest of this game. It was guaranteed to stay asleep.
No, indeed, and asleep it does stay as the Fly goes into the Venusaur, absolutely knocks it out, and the Venusaur is going to be going back to Kylan. But this is a Yawn here. I mean, like, the Torkoal doesn't need to do that much damage itself because of all of the extra residual damage that's happening here. So 2 turns of Hail, 2 turns of Vine Lash as the Yawn goes into that Landorus. I'm going to take it down to about half. We're going to see a Protect coming out next turn from the Torkoal, almost surely, to make sure that Landorus just has a little bit of a nap. In fact, less than half health being left with. And so, like, yeah, the following turn, Torkoal just gets to go for Burning Jealousy, and it's not quite enough. It can just Protect the next turn.
I reckon it's probably going to be in range because it didn't go for a Dynamax at all with the Landorus. It hasn't got any Max Quake boost or anything to speak of, so it's definitely going to be a Protect here. You want to be getting that Landorus to sleep for sure, and then 2 Burning Jealousies will definitely do it. So if the Landorus stays asleep and is able to survive at least 2 rounds of the Vine Lash as well, even with the Hail, then it would still need that first turn wake. So it looks like it is very much in this Torkoal's favour. There was me saying that it could be potentially dropped for the Zacian in this game, but it's actually potentially going to be stealing this game for Kylan here because it did weather the storm of that Max Geyser thanks to that Max Quake boost. A very smart Max Quake allowing that Torkoal to survive. And now that the Landorus is asleep, it's almost certainly going to be in range of any of the attacks that the Torkoal would want to go for. So it looks like it is going to be taking this game for Kylan.
Yeah, really, really effective Yawns coming out here. That Burning Jealousy as well is a single target move rather than, its power being reduced by hitting 2 Pokemon at the same time. Now it's only hitting the Landorus, so he's going to be more powerful than usual, which is not a factor that I ever thought that would be really in play for a match of VGC, but it just shows the level that we're playing at here. The Torkoal Burning Jealousy does knock out the Landorus, and Kylan will be taking the first game for Canada.
Yeah, Canada getting the first game there. Very interesting to see that end game. That was a lot of different ways it could have gone.
Yeah.
The Fly doing so much to the Venusaur was able to pick up the KO. It could have gone for Max Guard, but didn't need to because the Torkoal was definitely in the position to be able to take the game. Potentially, if the Max Geyser had gone into the protecting Torkoal, maybe it would have still KO'd because it is still in the rain at that point. Even with the special defense boost, it may have been close if it would have been able to pick up the KO. And given how the game ended up going, maybe that's what was needed to happen to try and take that Torkoal out, because then there would be no Yawns. Your Landorus should almost certainly be able to take on that Venusaur 1v1 in the end game, because most Venusaurs don't tend to carry Protect. One Fly would have done it, but instead going for the Venusaur instead meant that Torkoal ended up being able to take that end game.
Yeah, and it's such a large combination of factors in that end game as well, because a lot of it did really come down to all of the residual damage as well. We saw it knock out the Kyogre, we saw it knock out with both the chip damage that was on the Kyogre before on DJ's side of the field, but also the Vine Lash, and the exact amount of damage that was needed really came out from the Venusaur because of, I believe, that Life Orb that it was carrying. So there was a lot of factors there going into the game. So yeah, really, really nice to see it being so close, and really nice to seeing Torkoal edging that out in the end game here. So props to both players, but it will be Canada that is taking the first point of this match.
So congratulations to Canada. We've seen a lot of 4-0s coming out on this stream. So if that is a trend, then Canada's going to be very happy with that first win. But of course, there are 6 more games to come. So we are going to be cutting to a very short break, and we will be right back with the second game of this grand finals between Ryan and Narrowitch.